If you're not running Google Ads, you're leaving money on the table. You're not making as much money as you could. That's number one.
If you're already doing consistent numbers with your store on Facebook or TikTok, but you're not running any Google Ads yet, you're literally burning money and feeding your competitors.
So within 18 months, we reached 2 million a month at 650% ROAS.
In fact, when I was starting my brand, I probably lost on like 100K just from not running Google Ads.
If you zoom out a little bit and you look at the bigger picture, you got about 8.5 billion searches per day. Sometimes some dropshippers tend to treat their business a bit like a cash cow. They milk it until it's dead.
So to prevent you guys from being ignorant like I was, I decided to invite one of the top Google Ads agency owners to my channel to give you guys some free value.
So not just for Google, I think for all ad platforms, we see two defining dynamics that are shaping the future. And number one is user sophistication.
So if you're serious about advertising on Google, this video will be your answer. Good day everybody. I'm extremely happy to have Arian Ghotbi here on the channel to share some valuable insights on how to properly run Google Ads for your e-commerce brand and crush it. So let's start it off. Welcome Arian, and please give us a quick introduction.
Thank you, Blago. I'm excited to be here today. About myself, my name's Arian Ghotbi. I'm also known as the Google guy in the space. I've been around 5 years now in Google Ads, started at Google as a contractor, and help them manage the Google Ads campaigns for businesses. End of 2019, beginning of 2020, I decided to do my own thing and started Cyrus Digital, a boutique Google agency, as well as LB24, a furniture startup that I started with two of my business partners, Diego and Ugas. Fast forward now to 2024, agency has around 20 employees. We're servicing some of the biggest names in the D2C space, some large corporates as well, and the brand's doing well as well. We hit 8 figures early on, now making around 2 million a month, cruising on that. So yeah, we've been doing it for a minute and know a thing or two about scaling with Google.
Crazy stuff, man. That's a true practitioner right there. So correct me if I'm wrong, Arian, but at least in my opinion, everybody in the ecom space knows that they have to run Google Ads. Very few people know how to actually do it properly and use it reliably. So in your opinion, what are the main misconceptions and limiting beliefs dropshippers and ecom people generally have when it comes to running Google Ads?
Yeah, so very good question. And like always, with any ad platform, there's some misconceptions, there's some expectations that might not be feasible for the best outcome. With Google, I think the main pitfall for people is a lack of patience, right? Mm-hmm. Everyone comes to Google saying, yeah, I know it takes a bit longer, it's more sustainable, this, that, but then they lose their patience after 4 weeks. And Google just works a little bit different. And even the algorithms and the campaigns, the way they work, it takes more time to really flourish. So that's one of the main pitfalls, I think, is not setting your budget and your timeframes properly and being in a rush. Give it time. You need to bring at least 2 to 3 months, and then you can see some really strong results. We've had a situation actually about 6 months ago. We started working with a client and we scaled them to 50K within like 4 months, which is like super slow by any stretch of the imagination, especially for Meta. But then from the point of 2.5 months to 4 months, that 6-week period, we scaled to 1.5 million, because in the first 2.5 months, we gathered all the data we needed, we had all the insights, and then we could scale aggressively. So that's typically how Google works. You need a bit of patience. And limiting beliefs or, wrong practice that I see from a lot of brands, or especially dropshippers, is sometimes some dropshippers tend to treat their business a bit like a cash cow. They milk it until it's dead. And that's not the right approach, because at some point, you're going to have all these negative reviews, DMCA strikes, all these kinds of things, and it's just going to, wear you down. So, go more of a holistic approach, think about your customers, and that way you're going to have a much better time on all platforms.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely had, the same mentality early on in the days. I had this direct response mentality. If it's not profitable on day one, it's not worth it. But that leads to my next question. um, I thought you cannot run Google as a very strong standalone traffic channel and acquire new customers profitably. I was only thinking, oh, it's just for retargeting, just a few more bucks in ad spend, good ROAS.
Yeah,
But I was not, expecting to hit good numbers. So can you actually use Google Ads as a strong channel for acquiring new customers?
for sure, for sure. I mean, you know, if you zoom out a little bit and you look at the bigger picture, you got about 8.5 billion searches per day, right? That's a lot of eyeballs on that platform. And what you have to bear in mind also is that we're talking about a pull channel, right? It's not a push channel, it's a pull channel. So you're captivating people's existing interest. In marketing, we always talk about that opt in, right? Get people to opt in, accept cookie, whatever, newsletter, lead magnet, and so on and so forth. You want people to opt in the first place. And by Googling something, that is a form of an opt in. You're already committed to what you're searching for. So that's just to put it into perspective how powerful Google is in its essence. I think one more factor that plays a big role is the tracking. It's not perfect for sure, but it tends to be much cleaner than Meta, right? So that can play a huge role in scaling. And I would actually argue that you can scale very fast on Google as well. If you have the right offer, if it is a competitive offer, if you're satisfying that existing huge demand in a competitive way, then you can scale also really fast on Google. So in terms of being a good new customer channel, tremendous.
So is that also the case for your own brand? So you mentioned you have your own startup that you already scaled to 8 figures.
Yeah,
So is Google your main acquisition channel, or you're running omnichannel, or how is that?
for sure, for sure. So Google plays a huge role for us, right? Google is what made us big initially. I would say about 75% of the revenue is coming from Google. And we scaled fast and hard, and new customers all the time. So I think LB24 is a perfect case study proving that it's possible. Our product is more suitable for Google, I would say in general, but nonetheless, I think it's a good proof that you can acquire new customers profitably in the long term.
Can we go a little bit deeper on that and make like a short overview of how your brand pretty much started and
Yeah,
grew so fast? Because I think it's um, like most people think it's not possible on Google, right?
yeah,
So can you walk us through how that started, what campaigns and what approaches you started with,
yeah.
and how did you establish it in the long run?
For sure. So I think when we first started LW24, one major advantage that we had was sort of the matching skill sets that I had in my partners, right? So I partnered up with Ugas and Diego, who had been in the furniture business for a long time. We knew each other from the past, and these guys were super strong on the offline side of things, right? So all the logistics, all the sourcing, all those types of things, they had it under complete control from the beginning, which is great because, as you know, Blago, that tends to be an area that fucks up a lot
Yeah.
in any ecom scenario. So that was a very good starting conditions. And what we did was, we identified a need for a very specific product, which was box spring beds in the
Okay.
German market. There was explicit demand and growing demand for this product, which is always good, right? You always want to be in a bullish market. But furniture, you're dealing with a lot of big companies that have been around for a long time and have
Yeah.
huge budgets. It's difficult to penetrate. So we went a bit deeper and we tried to find this angle, this sort of niche within the market where we could establish ourselves and conquer it. And doing a bit of digging, one thing we found was that there was a lot of demand for beds with LED lights, but there wasn't that much supply for it. Actually,
Okay.
less supply than there was demand. So we checked with our supplier, can we get the LED beds? Answer was yes. So we started heavily focusing on that. And we leveraged that across the customer journey. So the targeting started with LED. We'd only show when someone was looking for LED beds. we make sure that person knows we sell LED beds through the ad copy, through the image that we'd use, through everything, through the product highlights. And same again on the product page, we'd leverage that again. And within a few months, we were able to, become super, super dominant on this niche. And I think until this day, if you look for box spring bed with LEDs or just bed with LEDs, we rank super, super high and strong. So that's kind of our market entry strategy. We conquered that smaller niche. And once we were making enough money, we then started to go broader, right? So now you're targeting sort of box spring beds overall. Eventually we start targeting beds overall. But, same like you conquer one channel and then move to the next, we conquered one niche and then moved to the next one. So that's how it all started. That's how we did it. So within 18 months, we reached 2 million a month at 650% ROAS.
6.5 ROAS, guys.
Yeah.
That's almost unbelievable in terms of Facebook. I remember when I was scaling my brand initially, and we had like 5-6 ROAS on Facebook in the US, and I was like, damn, that's impossible. But like over time it declined.
Yeah.
Whereas with Google, once you establish it, it gets more and more consistent, right?
Yeah, very true. And that's one thing I tend to see a lot with Google and Meta is if you look at the whole yearly graph on Meta, it looks something like this, right? You have your ups and downs. You've got Black Friday, that's super strong. You run a very specific offer, like a great BOGO offer, it goes up, but then it tends to go down again. Whereas with Google, if you look at the whole year and if you look year on year, especially, it tends to be like a, growing graph, more linear. So usually once you find a working element on Google, there is no, creative fatigue like on Meta.
Yeah.
Like there is no keyword fatigue. If a keyword works, it tends to work for a very long time. And as you find new keywords that work and new angles that work, you just keep stacking them on top of each other and they don't fatigue. So I would say that's, another advantage that you have with Google. Obviously with Meta, you can scale very fast and make a lot of money very quickly. With Google, I think while you can still scale fast, this compounding effect is a major factor. Yeah.
One thing that I had in mind when I was, first starting out with the brand was that there's almost no creativity in Google, and I was obviously wrong because what you described so far, there are so many elements that you can leverage as a marketer to stand out from the competition and really crush it. So, what creatives do you actually need to enhance the Google performance? What are the creative factors, creative elements, and where can you gain advantage as a marketer?
Yeah. So in terms of creatives, obviously, with Google, the elephant in the room is YouTube, right? That is your main source of top funnel traffic that gets attracted with creatives. If you take a scenario, say for example, you have a brand that has a very strong Meta and TikTok creative production, right? You're pumping out new creatives, new winners daily, weekly. It's just running and working. It's fairly easy to plug YouTube into that. It's fairly easy to adapt your process and also pump out YouTube creatives. What I would recommend you do is get a YouTube expert, someone who's really good. And instead of just getting them to work and set up campaigns, get them to build some SOPs for you. Get them to take a look at your Meta process, at your TikTok process and say like, hey, for YouTube, I need this format. I need these types of angles. That's what a structure needs to be like. And plug YouTube into your creative process. Because as we all know, all push channels, it's all about how many creatives you test and how creative you are with the angles, right? Yeah. So if you do that, I think you have very good chances of using your existing creative process for Google/YouTube. And obviously, that proves the point that you can be very, very creative on Google. Obviously, there is so many facets to it, right? VSLs is a huge thing as well on YouTube. A lot of people think VSLs are predominantly for, info products, courses, B2B, and so on and so forth. But for ecom, they can work really, really well, especially on YouTube. So I think that's another area where you can tap into a whole new field of creativity on YouTube specifically.
And what about the Google side when it comes to the search campaigns and the shopping campaigns?
For sure. So you don't, per se, there's no way to use creatives in search or shopping.
Hmm.
Well, shopping, yes, you have the product image, but on search, you don't have any way to use an image. There is image extensions and a few things like that, but nothing really worth mentioning. So there's no use of any images or creatives there. On shopping, you have the product image, which obviously plays a huge role. It grabs the attention. And if you're able to communicate to the client, like, hey, I have what you need, and this is a good, a cool, a quality product, that's going to be a major benefit. And there's also something where a lot of people lag is testing different product images on shopping. I would say 10 to 20% of the industry is doing it. So if you are doing that, you're going to be ahead of the competition for sure.
Hmm. And what about the copywriting?
Copywriting plays a huge role. I mean, if we're talking creativity in general,
Yeah.
not just creatives, of course, copy is a huge factor, right? Um, and this is something I care a lot about when it comes to search ads and also shopping ads is how well are those written, right? A lot of people argue people don't actually read them. It's more of like an intrinsic, like instinctive behavior rather,
Yeah.
um, the way you choose where to click. But nonetheless, I do think it's worth putting in the effort and have your search ads written by a proper direct response copywriter, right?
Okay.
Some people argue it doesn't affect. Well, it's definitely not going to hurt, is it? And it's not going to cost you that much. So with everything in Google, every lever you can pull, do it for maximum results.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we've heard left and right a lot of stories about, Google merchant account bans and all those problems and blocks that usually
Yeah.
dropshippers face. So, how can we deal with that? How can we enhance specifically the merchant account performance? How can we keep it in good standing? How do we make sure that the asset that we build is gonna be there for the long run?
Yeah. So, if you look at dropshippers, and we predominantly work with brands, though we do take on a few dropshippers. From my experience, most of the time dropshippers are suspended for something called misrepresentation policy,
Yeah.
right? And that can be things like, fake reviews, unrealistic claims, things of that nature, right? So if you want to run a Google store, there's very specific guidelines, and you should try and make it as authentic and honest as possible. If you're going to have every single item on sale, let's be honest, you're not really running a sale, are you? Or
Yeah.
if you've got like crazy reviews that are nowhere to be found but on your site, then those are the things that are being picked up on, and then you're going to get banned. And once you get banned, it's a wrap. You're probably not going to free it up. So just make the store as honest and transparent as possible, and then you have the best chances of getting the GMC live. And if you do, I mean, I think everyone knows how big Google is for dropshipping at the moment, right? Everyone's hearing this story. Like, we've had a few stories. We've had people reaching 1,700,000, crazy numbers. So it's worth, go putting in that time, tweaking your store and making sure it's compliant.
Yeah. And I think like the most compliant guys in the dropshipping space are the one product dropshipping guys who run like branded stores,
Yeah.
very compliant stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
One thing that I thought would limit my Google performance has been the amount of products. So
Yeah.
if you run only one main product on Google, is it a problem or not at all?
Yeah. So obviously, one product stores or one product setups have some intrinsic limitations, right? I'll give you an example. Say you're running a shopping campaign, shopping ad campaign. It's product ads, right? And you're giving this campaign $100 a day, and within this campaign you have 20 different products, right? 20 different pieces of clothing for men, women, children. Google is going to spend your $100 a day anyways, be that on one product or be it on 20 products. Now you're telling the campaign, I want a ROAS of 300. If you got 20 products, Google basically has a choice of 20 options where to spend that money. Where am I the most likely to get that 300% ROAS, that ROI? So having more products has some intrinsic benefits. Now, having said that, one product setups can work really, really well on Google as well. We've seen it happen before. Currently, we're scaling one store with basically one jumper to like 15, 20K a day.
Okay.
But then again, these guys did their research. They know exactly what they need to be doing. They know exactly, why they're choosing that product. So if that research is done well, then it can definitely work. I would also add, if you want to run a one product setup on Google, pick a product that has consistent demand on Google, right? That's going to make the pull factor of Google work in your favor. And to give you another example there, a product that has very consistent demand is a mini fridge, for example, right? Anyone who's built an office, a home office or gaming setup, at some point thought about, getting a little fridge for your setup. It's not crazy demand, but it's very sustainable throughout the year. And if you're able to capture that demand and to satisfy it in a very competitive way with a very good offer, then a one product can really kill it.
Yeah. And going from the advertising side to the conversion side a little bit, what are the best practices when it comes to landing pages?
Yeah. Very, very good question. When it comes to landing pages, I think it's about understanding what awareness stage the customer is at. I think that's the most important thing. Talking advertorials, for example, like how aggressive is your advertorial going to be? Is it going to be comparison between different products? Well, then the user is already, product aware, solution aware. He's trying to decide. And that's going to affect how you build that page. So I think, the awareness stage of the customer plays a huge role. And then there is some like very fundamental principles is like, who is buying this and why are they buying it, right? If it's a product that, for example, boyfriends are buying for their girlfriends, well, then you should probably highlight a review that's talking about a very happy girlfriend, right? Small psychological hooks like that, I think are very important. And then lastly, again, basics, making it easy to convert, make it easy for users to convert, and just making sure you're hitting those basics.
Yeah, just direct response fundamentals and congruency throughout the whole funnel, right?
Yeah, precisely.
Yeah, that's interesting. And if you were a social media based brand right now and you don't have Google as a channel yet, but you want to open it,
Yeah.
what would you do? How would you start? What type of campaigns? And how would you change, in the future?
Yeah. So I think in 2024, anyone, whether that be an existing brand on Google or a new brand on Google, needs to have a certain campaign stack. But that includes demand on a YouTube for top funnel traffic, search combined with advertorials or dedicated landing pages for mid funnel, and lastly, PMAX and shopping for mid to low funnel traffic.
Okay.
That is a setup everyone needs right now. The two biggest levers I would say that I see is search and PMAX. That tends to work the fastest and the best. But that requires a lot of testing and a very skilled media buyer. But yeah, those would be the campaign types that I would recommend if you were to start out as a strong meta brand on Google.
And when it comes to split testing, what are the main elements that you would test on those campaigns?
So it depends again on the campaign type. So with search, if you're running cold search, you're starting to run cold search, you should always pay attention to soft KPIs, right? Things like CTR, average session duration, and pages per session, and so on and so forth. That will tell you is what I'm doing relevant or not, right? From that, you can then go into micro conversions, add to carts, and so on and so forth. And so those are the criteria with which you judge in the beginning. As you progress, obviously, CPA, ROAS, and so on and so forth. What I think you should be split testing in the beginning with search is different angles, different keywords, right? So, for example, let's say you have a beauty brand, right? You sell a skin product for women in their 40s. So
Okay.
try different angles, right? Try different angles that could be relevant for that target group. Like rejuvenate skin after 40 would be a keyword. That's, about rejuvenation. Another aspect could be a pain point that they have, for example, wrinkles, what to do against wrinkles. Those two keyword sets are fundamentally different. And split testing those keywords is going to be crucial for long-term success.
Yeah, that's massive. And I guess most of the brand owners are already doing this research. They're already doing the different angles on Facebook and TikTok, but
Yeah,
they're just not implementing it on Google, right? Like they already did the prerequisite work and research to have
yeah,
all of those split tests ready to go. They just, are not executing it.
true, true, true. There's a big disconnect for sure. People like to look at Google like a channel, like all my energy, all my stuff, everything's going into Meta. Let me just onboard someone for Google and just throw a bit of money at it and see what happens. But the truth is, you need to invest properly and you need to transfer your knowledge. And unless you do that, mediocre input is always going to bring out mediocre output.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. And to zoom out a little bit, and kind of to paint the whole effect of Google on the business overall,
Yeah.
how can Google Ads, strong Google Ads channel help with establishing a long-term brand?
Yeah. So obviously, when we talk about establishing a long-term brand, the end goal is the exit, right? That's what we want to do. And I think let me maybe take a step back here. So if you're not running Google Ads, you're leaving money on the table,
Yeah.
right? There is a channel that could be generating money for you that you're not generating. So automatically, your valuation is going to be lower because you're not making as much money as you could. That's number one. And overall, I think from a performance marketing perspective, whenever you're looking at building very strong brand equity or just an overall strong case for an exit, I think two things are important. Number one is how many successful channels do you have? And number two is, are those channels being managed in-house, right? So what I would recommend you do is you start off by conquering channels one by one and mastering them. And once you've done that, then you build an in-house team to manage them. If you do that, that's going to be the best recipe for long-term brand value and the best possible exit.
Yeah, that's massive. Okay, Arian, and going into 2024 and beyond, what are the biggest trends that you're seeing on the Google platform overall, and how can ecom brands, take advantage, implement those trends in their advertising and really crush it?
So not just for Google, I think for all ad platforms, we see two defining dynamics that are shaping the future. And number one is user sophistication. The user is just becoming more difficult to convert. You need to do more convincing for them to buy. And number two is AI / how the ad platforms are changing the types of campaigns and how to optimize them, right? They're typically taking away functions from you. So those are the two main dynamics that are impacting our work. So what I think any advertiser should do in light of this is strengthen your marketing fundamentals, right? Everything we see coming out in the past 2 years or past year and a half that's been really crushing it, it's all centered around that, right? WhatsApp marketing is a huge thing right now. VSLs, advertorials, hybrid customer journeys. All of these are just, different ways to optimize the buying journey, right? It's about understanding what your customer needs, about understanding, hey, if I'm selling a high ticket product, let me offer that person a WhatsApp consultation on the buy page.
Yeah.
You're just optimizing the buying journey. That's what you're doing. So because all of these things that tend to work really well right now are founded on fundamental marketing principles, I think that's what you should focus on. And whatever the market's going to throw at you, however sophisticated the user is going to become, However many functions Meta or Google might take away from you, if you nail that, you're going to be okay and ahead of the curve.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of AI and algorithms getting better and better and better, do you like to kind of leverage that and leave a lot of the stuff when it comes to media buying on the algorithm itself, or you still want to have a lot of control over the campaigns?
Very good question. So I think you have to go with the development, right? On Meta, it's broad. On Google, it's also now broad match search, etc.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of go with the flow a little bit. Like there is no point. I don't know anyone who's really crushing it, who's like, really holding on to the manual approach. So
Yeah.
you have to go with it. That's number one. Number two, know when to use granular strategies.
Mm-hmm.
Just because overall, algorithmic style of media buying is working really well, doesn't mean that manual work doesn't have a place in today's world. So know when to leverage manual work, especially on Google, talking search term filtering, etc. There's a lot that you can do there. So that's number two, is don't completely get rid of it. And number three is you should use AI in your own process for media buying, for sure. I mean, for us, it opened up so many doors in terms of media buying. For example, one thing we now do as part of our onboarding, our campaign building, is any brand that we onboard runs through a set of analysis as part of the audit. And that includes one particular step where we download every single search query you ever ranked for, right?
Okay.
These can easily be upwards of 100,000. Anyone ever Googled that triggered your ad. Now, manually, it's impossible to filter these and categorize them, right? There's no way. But using AI, I can use pattern recognition and semantics and split them, based on the meaning behind them, based on the semantics. And then I can contrast them, then I can group them based on, okay, what's been performing really well, what's performing worse. And you can draw certain insights from there that you would, never be able to do without AI. So, yeah, the third point I'd make here is definitely explore how you can leverage AI in your own media buying process, not with the goal of not working anymore, of just reducing your work, but with making your output better.
Yeah, that's massive, and that can work for pretty much every platform and honestly every aspect of the business, not only media buying, right?
Yeah,
Just you know, that's pretty much an accelerator for understanding your customer and your marketing and your data much better, right?
100%.
Yeah, one
100%.
one thing it's my personal opinion, but um, once that AI is taking over the world, getting more and more responsibilities from people, the value of person-to-person communication will actually get higher. And one of the most important things for me, especially in my e-commerce journey, has been networking.
Yeah,
And you guys dropped one of the craziest events in Dubai last month. So do you want to say some words on that?
for sure. For sure. So yeah, we did Maidman 2023 on the 12th and the 13th of December in Dubai at the Atlantis Royal Rooftop Cloud 22. And yeah, I mean it's been a pleasure doing it with the gents, with Carl Weischer and Veli, aka Ecom Baba. Huge shout out to them and to everyone who joined. I think it set a new standard to ecom events. I think Cloud 22, Atlantis Royal, that's something that hasn't been done before. So it was a tremendous experience overall. And people that know me know I have a good network in certain areas, and I just wanted to give everyone access to that. That was my idea behind it. And my philosophy around networking is always down to two things. I believe you need to be around, number one, people that are where you want to be, right? Who do you want to be as a person? Do you want to be an entrepreneur? Do you want to be an athlete? What's kind of like your day to day? What's your archetype? Be
Yeah.
around people like that are already where you want to be. But that's not enough. You need to be around people that also want to be there, people that are on that journey. I think that's very, very important, because everyone knows the saying, if you hang around 5 millionaires, you will to six. I don't agree. I actually think if you hang around 5 millionaires and you're not a millionaire, they're going to stop hanging out with you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think you need to have both. And I think what we did well with Maidmen is we made that happen. We brought a lot of people on stage, you know, they're extremely successful. They're also much older than our scene and have more season and have achieved more. Very aspirational. It's great to connect with them and draw from that energy. But everyone in the crowd, that's all young, hungry go-getters. They're on the same path as you. So that's the thing I was the most happy about, is to bring those two things together. And we're going to be doing a lot more. Probably now in February, right around Affiliate World, there's going to be another Maidmen 2024.
Oh, that's gonna be huge. Like
For
every
sure.
time that I visit such conferences, I'm not going for the conferences. I'm going for the private events that are around those conferences. And in my opinion, those are 10 times at least more valuable than the conference itself. So
100%.
yeah, we should definitely keep track of that. And I guess you have very huge plans for the following months and the following years in expanding that. Okay, guys, so in order to keep this short and sweet and keep you with the most value possible, we will end this interview right here. Thank you so much, Arian, for being with us today. Thank you so much for the great value that you provided us. I hope you guys liked it as well. Make sure to check out his social media profiles. They're going to be down in the description. Check out his agency as well. He's a top agency owner and an 8-figure brand owner himself. So he's definitely a practitioner. So yeah, guys, tons of value here. Thank you so much, Arian. And yeah.
Thank you, Blago, for having me.